think that like psychology is the larger conversation of all of our discourses as a field, right? So like
Hmm.
psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, counselors, CASACs, peers, all of those people live under the umbrella of psych.
Like, if anything, we're not making ourselves a separate thing. We're showing that we are a part of this bigger community. So actually, I like
Yes,
that.
to me, psych out is like the idea that, we can win. We can win against our lesser judgments.
Hmm.
We can win against psychological problems. That's the whole point of being a counselor, right? Is that you can do war and battle
Hmm. No, I
with
fucking love this. Yeah.
psychological
Like,
problems,
how
right?
do we want to present that in like a mission statement, I guess?
Hmm.
Or maybe we could just talk about it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
The first thing that comes to my mind is rehumanizing counseling or
wow.
psychology, if you will.
Love it.
I started this conversation with you last week or 2 weeks ago when we met
Hmm.
about how, like, On Becoming a Therapist, which is Carl Rogers' book,
Hmm.
is sort of this like humanization of himself, right? Like of acculturating, to borrow a term from, our education, to the practices of being a therapist. And that, sometimes education, because in and of itself, it's a system, it's an institution, right? It's
Hmm.
bound by letters, it's bound by judgments, right? It's bound by practices. And I think that maybe some people don't get the sense or feel comfortable being themselves,
Hmm.
so they end up sort of just parroting or becoming, something that's not true to themselves, becoming something that's true to the paradigm, that's true to the system version of therapy, right?
Right.
And not necessarily feeling and not really feeling even comfortable in that. There's this like, what am I doing? Like, what's right? What's wrong? Like, I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm gonna mess someone up. Like this doesn't feel like it's helping them. Which is why I got so interested in responsibility.
Hmm.
To me, that's the second branch of what we're doing, right? We
Hmm.
want people to feel like they're part of a community, even if it's just in our videos and just in the comments and just in the maybe the possibility that they can come on one day and have conversation, or they can submit their stuff and it become a show. Like it creates community in a way. So I think that's
Yeah.
the other mission statement, is to sort of try to be like being at pace, being in New York, working with the people in our communities. For us, it's like on the one hand trying to help bring them up and bring
Hmm.
ourselves up to a
Hmm.
position of like feeling comfortable and human and like knowing what we're doing works.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then also like help with creating a community that feels comfortable facing those obstacles, the darkness that's in the world,
Hmm.
right? The darkness of psychological problems.
Right. And I love what you were saying about like rehumanizing. And, one thing that I've been coming across lately in my own practicing is I've been really using my personality as a tool, right? I'm, of course, I think, having a few years of background in the field gives me this foundation of, okay, I got the CBT down, I got the person-centered skills down, the listening, the, rephrasing things in a proper way, and knowing when to listen, when to jump in, and all these things, because those things can be difficult for early level counselors as well. But I think once you establish that foundation, using your personality as a tool makes it so much more authentic, makes it so like it engages the clients in such a way as well that makes them want to keep coming back. That's where I think that they, oh, I don't think that this is really helping my client. let's talk about the article that we just talked about the other day in class, right? About how the most important part, or one of the most important parts of counseling, is showing up consistently for your clients, and I think a big part of that is being authentically yourself. And when you can learn to use your personality as a tool and come into the session as yourself, not only does that help out your own burnout, because now when I come in, I don't feel like I'm putting on this mask or, filling in this role of this, okay, I need to be this way and fit this paradigm, to use your words, of being this counselor. Um, Now I'm coming in as myself with this foundation that I have, and it's more of a conversation and it's more authentic, and I think people just get so much more out of that. But it's difficult to I think it's really difficult for people that are first coming into the field to be able to do that because you need the foundation first. I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that as soon as I got into the field. I mean, me being who I am, I think I kind of did that a little bit anyway, a little bit, but I wasn't very confident in it. But now I can really lean into it, with a little more experience.
Mm.
Um,
Like one of the things we didn't talk about today, and I just want to kind of plug it in a way, is that, we're talking about like what, our values are. And I think this is something, I had just gotten back from this conference. I went to a narrative therapy conference in California. And um, one of the things I really noticed about that type of therapy is
mhm,
how it really attempts to honor values, and that these values are really constructed across so many levels of a person's existence,
mhm,
right? So, like you're telling me right now, you're talking about that you're seeing your own values as Rob. Like Rob is distinctly made up of his cultural experience, of his experience of becoming a counselor, of learning these different practices, and that you're
mhm,
recognizing because of the key element, which so many things in research have asserted, is the relationship, right?
mhm,
That people relate to your value of authenticity,
mhm,
like of drawing on your own values. So our first sort of episode is like, what are our values? And
mhm,
humanizing, like, because I think this is a big problem, um, a pervasive problem of our society, is that as like techno and I don't know, I don't have any research on this, but that technology has sort of divided us from our humanity in some ways.
mhm,
And it's created this sort of context where kids think like, this is what it means to be a person. Or,
mhm,
not just kids, everybody thinks like, and then so they're sort of infected with these belief structures that, like I need to be a certain way, or you know, I'm defective
mhm,
because like as I look around, TikTok, like I see this, I see that. And they're not saying that out loud, but you know, the ability to be authentic, if we're going to a Rogerian perspective, is the problem, right? Like person centered is saying like their ability to feel like themselves is the problem. The
mhm, mhm.
distance between that is the problem. So I think like, and I don't know that we're there. I'm not saying I'm there, that I'm like, great
Who
at
can ever say that we're there, right? This is going to be a journey.
yeah. But I think the channel is like about that in some sense, right? It's about that like congruence,
Mhm,
right? Like finding like a sense of feeling comfortable with what you see every day in your chairs that you're
mhm,
working from,
mhm,
right? That's part of our values too, is that like we're trying to source ourselves continuing to learn,
mhm,
alongside the community that we're trying to create to be
mhm,
more human
mhm.
and better therapists.
Yeah. And the other thing that I love is that, you were kind of talking about, right, this Rogerian perspective of how we are trying to help our own clients become more authentic versions of themselves and to grow and all these things. And we need to exemplify that as counselors. I mean, that comes also with how we show up in the room, valuing our own personality and values and not being that, robotic type of thing. Because how are we going to preach one thing and act a completely different way? And I
Hmm.
think by even doing this podcast, like we're getting in the trenches with our community, We're not just preaching to them. We're trying to show that we're on this growth journey, that this growth journey never ends, that we are looking to constantly develop our own skills and challenge our own cognitive complexity and that is what we're trying to do here, and we want to open it up to the entire field. We don't, we're gonna have this podcast as a way for us to grow, but we want this to extend way further than what, just this conversation between you and myself. We want this to become a space where everyone in the field, counselor or not, just in psychology, can come on this journey with us and be inspired to grow as well. I mean so I really appreciated when you said that about, the Rogerian principles, and it just had me connecting all these little dots of what exactly what we're trying to do here. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I think cross-pollination is a really important problem we have right now together. And I think
Mm,
I learned this, and I'll explain what I mean by cross-pollination. I think I
yeah.
learned this in my recent research on social work, as compared to counseling work, right? And we can do a whole episode on that too one day. But I think that the cross-pollination for me means that, like, when you go into a specific set of practices, that like some of it rubs off on you, and then can go into another set of practices and be okay. So I read an
Hmm.
article when I was traveling towards my dissertation topic about a group of narrative therapists who attempted to make a chat GBT work through WhatsApp and do scaffolding conversations, right?
Okay.
So they talked about, and this is totally playing off what you said, they thought they could handle it, but they had to hire a programmer to help them. And so
Mm,
we're at a time now where, like, a therapist needs to know how to work with technology in a way
mm,
that maybe they never did before.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I think, like, whether it's like not saying like you and I are going to have to learn to program, but like, we leave our doctoral programs having to know how to do statistics, having to learn how to use statistical software, but we don't leave necessarily like learning how to face the beast that is like technology and media, and what is now considered the, which I think is going to be the fifth, sixth wave of therapy, which is the influence of large learning models, large language models, and how
Mm,
that's going to change the way we practice. I mean, Zoom has entirely, COVID and Zoom has arguably changed therapy forever in a way that no other thing has changed therapy in to the degree to which it changed therapy, right?
mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about waves, you can talk about, so like multicultural counseling, like, it was one of the last major waves in therapy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what happened in that time was people were like, counseling's counseling. Why do we need to consider race? Why do we need to consider culture? If congruence works, congruence should work across all races, all clients, all genders. We don't need to think about their gender. We only need to think about if they're congruent or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the argument against Sue and Rats and all these people who were like, think about the culture, think about microaggressions, put yourself in their context, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
now we're 20 years after, actually 40 years from the 80s when Seuss first started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And we ask ourselves that question all the time. Where am I situating myself with this person? Where are they situated? How is oppression actually influencing where they sit in the room with me?
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where even Rats, and I talked about this briefly in a class we had together, is bringing in the word decolonization into the conversation.
Mm.
how do we decolonize counseling? So that, again, I think we had 4 episodes already that we referenced that didn't happen yet.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
like this idea that culture is important became a wave, and so when we look back, when we learn how to be counselors, we look at Freud, whether it's accurate or not, right? We look at it because it happened. It was important to the shaping of the field of psychology, right?
Hmm.
We look at like humanistic, we look at existential, we look at all these things, all these, we look at CBT, which are considered early waves, right? And then we look at multiculturalism, which is considering a wave. Is technology a wave? I don't know. I argue it would be. I argue in
Hmm.
40 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to look back and say, I don't know what number we're on. I don't care. Fifth, sixth, fourth, whatever it is. People
Hmm.
argue about what the waves are. But I will argue that looking back from the future, if we're even still here,
Well, one of these days we're gonna go,
and yeah,
but we're here for now.
as yeah, maybe that's another episode, whether we're still here or not 100 years from now. But that we will look back and say that technology was a wave. That like, and what that wave looks like, we're still figuring out. Is it just that now we can meet with people at any time, at any place, in any,
Yeah,
country, and
yeah.
or is it that, there's this additional context of machines having conversations with people,
Hmm.
and that influence, the influence that those conversations have on our conversations.
Yeah, and as you talk about it, I'm like, how could it not be a wave, right? As you're making this argument, because I think that we consider anything a wave when it's this shift in either our understanding of our clients' problems, the way we relate to them, or the way that we engage and communicate with them, and when it has a big impact on what's going on, and that is so clearly happening here. I mean, I when I started this, I haven't done anything except for telehealth therapy since I started. It's been 3 years that I've had in the field where, okay, I've had my time working in the hospital, which was face to face, but doing with clients, I've literally only done uh, telehealth. So to say that this hasn't shifted the field and the way that we relate to our clients and given us new things to consider about how we understand our clients and how we're going to relate to them, yeah, no, it's absolutely one of the ways. I would agree with you.
And we, meaning you and I, and all the others who have sort of entered in, with our own context of technology, right? So like if you think about your professors, like anybody who's like 20 years, I'm in my 40s, so anybody, 10, 15, 20 years my senior may have a very different technological context,
Hmm.
right? They may have
Hmm.
like grown up with technology, but they may not have had like that sort of introductory media, social media, and then also like have started, like you said, your whole entire experience of counseling is shaped and framed by being on a computer in front of somebody else and learning how to read things and read their cues and manage, not knowing like whether, they're doing certain things, and essentially like we're living in, and I'll end with this, we're living in the context, the educational context of this pre-technological influence.
Hmm.
And
And
so
think about our
really,
clients too. Yeah. Their
well,
their formative years
yeah,
are
they're,
happening in the way that they
yes,
relate
yes,
through
and they
media.
have that issue too. But we, I think like as a field, I don't think our educations as master students is even remotely caught up to the experiences that
Hmm.
technology has created to our field, right? Like the
Hmm.
ACA added the online stuff like even before COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
the distance counseling ethical considerations, But to
Hmm.
my knowledge, like in thinking about, and you can answer the question yourself too, in thinking about your education, other than that sort of, hey, technology is a new thing that we have to consider ethically. did it really shape? I mean, none of the counseling techniques course material, to my knowledge, for the most part, is situated in this world that you and I live in now. It's
Hmm.
situated in a world where people never did counseling from their living rooms. It's situated in a world where people had to make appointments and show up
Hmm.
with people who sat in the room with them. And so all
Hmm.
the books, all the information, all of the teaching is situated in that world. And so I
Hmm.
think, to kind of bring it all the way back to our purpose, that's our purpose. We find ourselves in a situation that no one's taught us about and we don't understand. And it can create a lot of anxiety and
Hmm.
pressure and confusion. And so, how do we like get up and say, we want the next generation of counselors? We will be the 70 and 80-year-old people someday, probably.
Yep.
How do we begin to situate the conversation that embraces, in the same way it embraced multiculturalism?
Talking about waves, this isn't going to be the last wave. The way that we handle, like, me and you through this podcast, like trying to adapt to a new wave and evolve with it, and bring in our our entire field with us, so that they don't feel alone on this journey. I think this is going to play as an example for, the next waves that are going to come, because like we want us to, and we want the field to continue to evolve with the, changing circumstances of the world, and continuously finding ways to adapt with, and better understand clients and better engage with them. So yeah, if, you know being now that this whole technology wave is something that we're trying to understand, the way that we're approaching it is just as important, because it's going to serve as an example for, the future generations, and how, you know when we're stuck in our ways, how they can kind of push us to even evolve even further.
Yeah. And I think therapists, or as therapists, we learn about our clients by asking questions, right? We learn through our questions.
Hmm.
And in my mind, like this very thing, like when you first approached me, or I don't even know how we kind of got into this, conversation, but that, it's really a question. It's like asking questions is the way we learn. And we're asking questions like, how has our like need for certain information changed based on the informational society we live in, right? Like how have people been, influenced? How do people practice, and now I'm going to sort of a narrative term, but like self-surveillance because of this influence of technology and always being seen and not being able to shut the bullying off if you're a young person and
Hmm.
you're being bullied at home by the media. So to me, it's just there's the client piece, which is so big in like how this technology has changed the way they look at themselves, and then there's just the you know basic level like influence it has on counselors and how they practice and the places they practice in and the different things that could come up. I mean, I can't even imagine the level of influencing and whether this has been written about of distraction now, right? That like how much different distraction might be. Because you can already be distracted as a counselor in
Yeah,
sessions,
might be.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to boot, like you have like a cat or a dog, or your home is somewhere near a playground, or like you're home and you hear dripping and you're like, oh my God, I hear dripping and I'm in a session. Like these are all things that are
Hasn't People have
influencing.
never had to worry about before. Yeah, it's
Yes.
a whole
So
nother.
So I think, even I think overall, right, we're asking questions, and some of our questions may relate to this, and some of our questions may just relate to, some of the undercurrents of our practices. Because you and I think we share a lot of values around like the spirit of what's happening, right?
Hmm.
Like the energy of our own lives and how important it is to kind of bring that
Oh,
vitality
absolutely.
to the room and and that, like, and then we're living in this shadow of like what is acceptable and tolerated and not tolerated, and then and feeling like whether it's okay to be a certain way and not be a certain way, which speaks to this like imposter theory. And so I just think that we're asking these questions of ourselves and hoping that between ourselves and our community we will solve at least some of this stuff for ourselves enough to be able to say, okay, well, we know a little bit more about it now. We might not
Hmm.
have an answer. I don't mean solve in that way, but just getting our questions refined,
Hmm.
for ourselves and for the community, and learning how to sort of see ourselves better, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, this conversation we're having right now, this is just me and you, like our ideas. Imagine when we open this up to the larger community and start getting their questions and their ideas and what it's going to spark in me and you and what it's going to spark in the rest of people. Like, I'm getting excited here. This is, I could see how this is such an avenue just for the evolution of the field in general.